Right now, every email you send, every video you stream, every online banking transaction you make is traveling through a cable no thicker than a garden hose, buried just a few meters beneath the ocean floor. And 17 of those cables pass through a single, narrow stretch of water between Iran and Oman. Together, they carry roughly 30% of all global internet traffic. 3 billion people depend on them every single day. And the most uncomfortable truth of this entire war, the one nobody in the American government is saying out loud, is this: the United States Navy cannot stop Iran from cutting every single one of them. Most people believe the internet is something in the sky, a cloud, satellites bouncing signals down to phones and laptops, wireless, intangible. That is not how the internet works. 95 to 97% of every piece of international data traveling anywhere on Earth right now is moving through physical cables lying on the ocean floor. There is no backup. There is no satellite network capable of handling this volume. If enough of those cables are cut at the right points, the internet as we know it simply stops working for entire regions of the planet. By the end of this video, you will fully understand which cables Iran is threatening right now, why they are deliberately placed in the exact waters Iran has been training to control for decades, why the United States Navy's most advanced ships cannot actually defend them, and why the next move Iran makes beneath the Persian Gulf could reach into the life of every American sitting in front of a screen at this very moment. Let us start with what an undersea cable actually is, because understanding the scale of the problem starts with understanding how fragile the thing is. A modern international cable that carries internet traffic is roughly the thickness of a garden hose. Inside that hose is a bundle of glass fibers, each one no wider than a human hair, that carry pulses of light at nearly the speed of light. A single cable can move more than 40 trillion bits of information per second. A single cable can carry every phone call, every text message, every streaming video, every banking transaction moving between 2 continents. That is the scale of what a single cable no thicker than your garden hose is doing right now. These cables get laid by specialized ships over a period of months. They get buried under the seafloor where they approach shore so that fishing anchors cannot catch them. Where the water is deeper, they just lie on the bottom, held in place by their own weight and the calm of the seafloor. For most of their length, they are invisible. They do not show up on public maps. They do not broadcast their position. They simply sit there carrying the nervous system of the global economy day and night, with nobody but a few specialized engineers even aware they exist. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The world's entire undersea cable network has 2 critical choke points, 2 narrow passages where dozens of these cables get bundled together because the geography forces them to. The first choke point is the Red Sea, the corridor connecting Europe to Asia through the Suez Canal. 16 major cable systems run through that water. The second choke point is the Strait of Hormuz, that narrow passage between Iran and Oman that is only 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. Every single cable connecting the Persian Gulf countries to the rest of the global internet runs through that strait, and both of those choke points are now active war zones at the same time, which has never happened before in the history of the internet. Here's what makes this worse. The engineers who built these cables knew Iran was a risk. They did something specific to avoid it. They deliberately routed every one of those 17 cables through the waters on the southern side of the strait, on the Omani side, to stay out of Iranian territorial waters. That was the entire plan. Keep the cables away from Iran. Let them run along a coast that does not belong to a hostile government. On paper, this works. In reality, it does not work at all, because Iran does not need to be in its own waters to reach those cables. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy operates a small fleet of diesel-electric submarines specifically designed for shallow water operations in the Persian Gulf. The Ghadir class is about 120 feet long, carries a crew of 18, and can stay underwater for several days at a time. The Fateh class is larger and more capable. Neither of these submarines is built to fight another navy. They are built to operate quietly, close to shore, in exactly the kind of water where cables run. The Revolutionary Guard also operates trained combat divers who have spent decades practicing the exact kind of underwater sabotage that would be required to cut a cable, and the Guard has laid thousands of naval mines across the strait, some of which have drifted from their original positions and could settle near those cable routes at any time. But here is the problem. Cutting a cable does not even require a submarine or a diver. It does not require any sophisticated technology at all. In March of 2024, a cargo ship named the MV Rubimar was hit by a missile in the Red Sea. As it sank, its anchor dragged across the seafloor and sliced through 3 undersea cables at the same time. The damage took 6 months to repair. 6 months. And that was one ship with one anchor doing it by accident during a different war. If Iran wanted to do this deliberately, it could happen this afternoon, and nobody would know for certain who did it until weeks later. The history of what happens when these cables fail is not a theoretical discussion. It is a record of real-world consequences that have already played out. In 2008, 4 cables were cut near Egypt in the Mediterranean. The cause was never fully confirmed. For several weeks, India's international internet bandwidth dropped by 60%. Banks could not process international transactions at normal speed. Stock exchanges slowed. Call centers that handle American customer service for major companies went dark. Outsourcing firms that depend on constant communication with the United States could not function. That was 4 cables in peacetime, hundreds of miles from any war. What we are talking about now is 17 cables in an active war zone, with a government that has publicly threatened to target them. There is another angle that almost nobody is talking about. On March 1st of this year, just after the war with Iran began, Iranian drones struck 3 data center complexes belonging to Amazon Web Services. 2 in the United Arab Emirates, 1 in Bahrain. This was the first time in any conflict that cloud computing infrastructure had been directly attacked by military action. For a few hours, banking systems, payment platforms, and business software across 6 countries simply stopped working. Amazon Web Services is the company that runs the back end of roughly a third of the internet. When Amazon servers are offline, the internet is functionally broken for billions of users at once. And Iran just proved it has the drones, the targeting data, and the political will to hit them directly. Now stop and think about the cold math here. A trained combat diver with a basic cutting tool can sever a cable that cost hundreds of millions of dollars to lay. A dragging anchor from an old rusted cargo ship can do the same thing in the course of a single bad afternoon. A mine that drifted from its original position and settled on a cable by accident can ruin the internet connection of 3 billion people. On the other side of this equation, the United States Navy has spent more than $1 trillion building warships, aircraft carriers, submarines, and defense systems. A Chinese-made cutting tool in the hands of a Revolutionary Guard diver costs less than a used car. An American Arleigh Burke destroyer costs more than $2 billion. That is the asymmetry that is keeping American admirals awake at night. Every single asset the United States Navy has is expensive, visible, and designed to fight other warships. The thing Iran is threatening to do costs almost nothing, cannot be seen from the surface, and cannot be defended against with missiles. Is this the most underestimated weapon in the entire Iran war? Something that could reach into every American home within days of being activated? Or is Iran bluffing because it knows the United States would respond with overwhelming force the moment the first cable goes down? One side says the Revolutionary Guard would never actually do this because the consequences would end the regime. The other side says the Revolutionary Guard is a mafia with nuclear ambitions that has already threatened to set the entire Gulf on fire. Write which side you believe in the comments, because the people who say Iran is all talk and the people who say Iran is desperate enough to try anything are about to have a very serious argument under this video. And it gets worse. The specific cables Iran is threatening are not random cables. Each one of them is a backbone for a different piece of the global economy. The Falcon cable, operated by a company called Flag Telecom, connects Mumbai to the Gulf and moves more than 40 trillion bits of data per second. If that cable goes down, India loses a huge portion of its connection to Europe overnight. The Gulf Bridge International Cable, also called the Middle East-North Africa Cable System, connects Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Iran itself to the rest of the world. It is the single digital backbone of the entire Gulf region. If it gets cut, 7 countries go partially dark at the same time. The fiber and Gulf cable connects all 7 Gulf countries to each other and outward. The Meta 2 Africa Pearls extension was supposed to be the most ambitious undersea cable project ever attempted. a 45,000-kilometer cable designed to connect the Gulf to Africa, Europe, and South Asia, reaching 3 billion people with high-speed service. That project is now frozen. The French company that was contracted to lay it, Alcatel Submarine Networks, officially declared what the French call force majeure, a legal term that means we cannot safely operate here and we are walking away. Their cable-laying ship, the Ile de Batz, is sitting stranded off the Saudi coast. Billions of dollars in investment paused indefinitely. This is where the conversation fundamentally changes. Because the damage from a cable cut does not stop at slower internet speeds, it reaches directly into the American economy in ways most people have never considered. Amazon, Microsoft, and Google have spent the last 5 years and tens of billions of dollars building massive data center complexes in the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. Those data centers were supposed to be the foundation for the next generation of artificial intelligence. They run on cables that pass through the same waters Iran is threatening. Cut the cables and those data centers become unusable even if the buildings themselves are perfectly intact. The billions spent, the long-term strategy of American technology companies, the race for artificial intelligence dominance against China, all of it runs through cables Iran could sever with a diver and a cutting tool. Now, here is where this starts affecting people who do not follow geopolitics or technology. India runs its entire information technology export sector through these cables. That sector generates $250 billion a year. When you call the customer service line for a major American bank, there is a good chance you are speaking with a person in Mumbai or Bangalore whose computer is connected to the American bank's computers through a cable that runs past Iran. When you use a modern payment app, there is a chance the transaction is being processed through servers that communicate over that same route. Iran cutting the cables does not just hurt India, it hurts every American who interacts with a system that depends on Indian back-end services, which is roughly every working American who uses modern technology. The internet outage would not be theoretical. It would show up as failed transactions, delayed approvals, error messages, and slowdowns across every banking and commerce platform that has any exposure to the Gulf or to Indian processing. And there is a second problem that compounds the first one. Even if a cable gets cut, the ships that can repair it may not be able to reach it. There are roughly 60 specialized cable repair vessels in the entire world. That number is not in the thousands. It is 60. Each one is expensive to operate and requires a highly specialized crew. None of them can safely enter a war zone. The United Kingdom withdrew its only minesweeping ship from the Gulf earlier this year, and because the ship could not return home under its own power, it had to be loaded onto a cargo ship and shipped back. That gives you a sense of the condition of the repair fleet. If Iran cuts cables in the Strait of Hormuz right now, those cables could remain severed for months, possibly longer, possibly until the war ends completely, which may not happen for a long time. But here is the most disturbing part of this story, the part that explains why the title of this video says the Navy cannot stop Iran. The United States Navy is trying. It has not given up. Specialized ships called Avenger-class minesweepers were pulled out of the region and retired last September, 5 months before the war began. That turned out to be a disaster. The ships that replaced them, called littoral combat ships, have metal hulls. The old Avenger ships had wooden hulls, which is a critical difference when you are hunting magnetic mines. A metal ship in a minefield can trigger the mines itself. A wooden ship passes through mostly unnoticed. The Navy pulled out the wooden ships and replaced them with the wrong kind of ship, right before the situation that required the right kind of ship. Only one American littoral combat ship is currently in the Gulf. The others are thousands of miles away in Malaysia. The repair of that mistake is going to take years, not weeks. Meanwhile, the Navy is doing everything it possibly can with what it has. The United States operates a program that has trained dolphins to detect underwater mines and suspicious objects. Those dolphins have been on active duty for more than 50 years, and their sonar is more accurate than most mechanical systems the Navy has built. Underwater drones called Knifefish and Kingfish are scanning the seafloor. MH-60 Seahawk helicopters are sweeping near the surface with laser detection systems. P-8 Poseidon aircraft, which are converted Boeing passenger jets, are patrolling overhead with listening equipment. Every single tool the Navy has that can detect a threat beneath the water is being used around the clock by American sailors who have not slept a full night in weeks. But the honest answer, the one no American admiral will say on camera, is that none of this can actually prevent a determined attack on the cables. The problem is not a lack of equipment. The problem is geography. The cables are too long. They run for hundreds of miles through water that changes conditions constantly. A diver placed in the water from a fishing boat on a dark night, armed with basic cutting tools, could reach a cable and sever it before anyone on the surface noticed anything unusual. The attack would take less than an hour. The repair would take months. And by the time anyone figured out who did it, if they ever did figure it out, the damage would already be complete. So here is the question that matters. The most powerful navy in human history has 2 aircraft carriers in the region, 18 warships on station, 10,000 sailors working around the clock, and every piece of advanced detection technology the American military has ever built. Against this stands a small Iranian submarine, a few trained combat divers, and a threat to a cable the size of a garden hose. Is this the defining military paradox of our time, where American power has become so dependent on invisible digital infrastructure that a third world regime with basic tools can hold it hostage? Or is this a bluff that Iran would never carry out because doing so would end the regime within 48 hours of the first cable going dark? One side says this is the future of warfare, and America is not ready for it. The other side says Iran is a paper tiger that will not dare to actually pull the trigger. Write where you stand in the comments, because the people who say American technology has a hidden weakness and the people who say Iran is too scared to test it are about to have the most important argument on this channel. And if you have not seen our breakdown of why the United States Navy cannot clear the mines in the Strait of Hormuz, and why the ships designed for exactly this situation were sent to a scrapyard 5 months before the war started, make sure to watch that one next.